The Karth Dominion prided itself on strength. Strength in battle, strength in will, strength in blood. To be Karth was to be unyielding. That was what Commander Sarai Voth had been taught from the day she could lift a blade. So when the humans arrived, frail, soft-bodied, with emotions that leaked through every glance and smile, she laughed. Especially at him. Lieutenant James Rourke, one of the human liaisons assigned to the Dominion's 7th Fleet. He was average by every Karth standard, too slow, too kind, and far too fragile. His species had only recently joined the Galactic Coalition, and to the Karth, humanity was barely above servant stock. Sarai remembered the first time she saw him on the sparring deck. He'd offered her a polite nod, lifting a training staff. "Care for a round, Commander?" He'd said with that disarming, infuriating grin humans seemed to wear so easily. She'd humored him. He lasted 17 seconds before she disarmed him and sent him sprawling across the floor. His staff clattered away as he gasped for breath. 17 seconds, she'd said dryly, folding her 4 muscular arms across her chest. Impressive for something made of jelly. He coughed, smiling through the bruises. "That's 3 seconds better than last time. At this rate, I'll beat you in, what, a decade?" His optimism only deepened her disdain. Humans survive on hope because they have nothing else. He laughed softly. "Maybe, but sometimes hope's enough." She turned away, dismissing him. In the Karth Dominion, weakness was unforgivable, and Rourke was its living embodiment. Middle, the mission. Months passed, and the Dominion's alliance with humanity deepened. The Coalition had sent joint expeditions to secure the border worlds near the Outer Veil, uncharted systems rich in minerals but haunted by hostile species. Sarai's unit, the 7th Vanguard, was chosen to accompany the humans to Vareth 9, a newly discovered planet covered in endless crimson deserts. Their objective: establish a perimeter base and secure communication relays. It should have been routine, but routine missions never stayed that way near the Veil. The first sign of trouble came 3 days into the deployment. Sarai stood in the outpost command tent, studying holographic scans of the dunes when the comms flared. "Contact, Northeast Ridge." Unknown hostiles. By the time she and her squad reached the ridge, the humans were already pinned down. Energy bolts streaked through the air, exploding in bursts of blue flame. The attackers were Vrothar, silicon-based raiders known for their brutality and their taste for enslaved species. And among the pinned soldiers was Rourke. Sarai barked orders. Her squad flanked the ridge, returning fire. The Vrothar were relentless, their crystalline armor deflecting standard plasma rounds. The battle dragged on for hours, sand turning black under the heat of weapons fire. When the smoke cleared, only a handful of them stood. The humans had taken the worst of it, Rourke among them, bleeding from a gash across his shoulder but still moving, still carrying one of his injured crewmates toward the med shuttle. Sarai approached him, breathing hard. "You fought well for a soft one." He chuckled weakly. "You say that like it's a compliment." She looked him over, her expression unreadable. "Don't get used to it." That was the first time she didn't laugh at him. The storm. A week later, disaster struck again. A sandstorm unlike anything recorded in the system tore across Vareth 9. Winds screamed at 400 kilometers per hour, burying everything in a crimson haze. The outpost's shields failed within minutes. Sarai was in the command tent when the power went out. "Calms down," a human tech shouted. The storms knocked out every transmitter. Emergency shelters? Compromised. Half buried already. Through the chaos, Sarai saw Rourke rushing through the storm, dragging heavy power cells toward the emergency beacon. "Lieutenant," she yelled over the howling wind. You'll be ripped apart out there. He looked back, sand whipping across his visor. If we lose the beacon, rescue won't find us. Somebody's gotta keep it running. Then let someone stronger do it, she shouted, striding toward him. He shook his head. You're needed in there. I'm not. Before she could reply, a lightning bolt split the sky, slamming into the dunes nearby. The ground erupted, and both were thrown aside. When she woke, the world was half buried in sand. The tent was gone. The comms were gone. And Rourke was nowhere to be seen. She stumbled through the storm, scanning for any sign of life. Then she saw it, a faint beacon light flickering through the haze. Rourke had done it. He'd reached the tower. But he wasn't moving. The rescue. Sarai fought her way toward him, her armor screaming warnings as the storm pounded against her. She found him collapsed at the beacon base, his oxygen feed ruptured, his suit temperature plummeting. He'd done it. He'd kept the beacon running. But he was dying for it. She dropped to her knees beside him, ripping open her own oxygen line to feed into his. He stirred weakly, eyes barely open. Commander, beacon stable? She nodded, pressing a gauntlet hand to his shoulder. You fool. You insane human fool. He smiled faintly. Guess hope's enough after all. Be quiet, she hissed, wrapping her arms around him to shield him from the wind. Save your strength. Didn't think you cared, he murmured. I don't, she said automatically. But her voice cracked. Hours passed before the rescue ship found them. Sarai refused to move until the medics pulled him from her arms. After the storm, Rourke survived, barely. The medics said he'd suffered oxygen deprivation, multiple fractures, and frostburn from the storm's plasma bursts. He should have died. But he didn't. Sarai visited him in the infirmary days later. He was pale but awake, his usual grin returning when he saw her. Well, he said, voice hoarse. Guess the jelly made it after all. She folded her arms, hiding the relief in her chest. Barely. If I hadn't found you, you'd have told everyone I died a hero, huh? She frowned. No. I'd have told them you died stupidly. He laughed, wincing at the pain. Fair enough. Then, softer. Thanks for coming back for me. Sarai hesitated. I couldn't let you die. The galaxy needs its favorite fool. But the truth burned in her chest. She couldn't bear to lose him. Not after everything. From that day, her laughter toward him changed. It wasn't cruel anymore. It carried warmth, respect, and maybe something more. The final test. Months later, Vareth, 9 became the target of a full-scale Vrothar assault. The Dominion called for evacuation, but Sarai refused to abandon the outpost. The humans stayed with her. The enemy hit fast and hard, raining plasma from orbit. In the chaos, Sarai's shuttle was struck. It spun out of control, crashing into the canyon below. She woke trapped beneath the wreckage, her armor sparking. Her comms were dead. She was alone, until she heard his voice. Commander, hold on, I'm coming. Rourke. He'd come for her again. She tried to stop him, but her strength was gone. The Vrothar patrols were closing in, energy signatures growing stronger. He appeared through the smoke, helmet cracked, limping badly. You look terrible, he said, forcing a grin. She managed a weak laugh. So do you. You came here to die, human? He shook his head. Came here to save a friend. Using sheer willpower, he pried open the wreckage, dragging her free. Plasma bolts exploded around them, searing the sand. He shielded her with his body, returning fire with a single rifle. You'll never make it, she shouted. Maybe not, he said, but you will. He hit the beacon on his wrist, triggering his last emergency flare. The explosion sent a signal through the smoke, enough for the extraction ships to lock on. But the Vrothar were too close.
Go, he yelled. Now.
She shook her head, grabbing him by the vest. I'm not leaving you again. He smiled softly. I told you, Commander, sometimes hope's enough. And then he pushed her toward the evac line as the ridge behind him collapsed in a wave of fire and dust. The Yendi, the warrior. They found his body 3 hours later, buried beneath the wreckage. Sarai didn't speak for days. The Dominion awarded him posthumous honors, calling him the Human Flame, a soldier who refused to let the darkness win. But to Sarai, he was more than that. He was proof that strength wasn't always muscle or fury. Sometimes it was heart. Weeks later, during a coalition ceremony, Sarai stood before the Dominion Council. Her armor gleamed, her voice steady. You once told me that humans were weak, she said, looking around the chamber. That they were too emotional, too fragile, too hopeful. You were wrong. I've seen one outfight death itself, not because he was strong, but because he cared. Silence filled the hall. She reached into her cloak and placed his insignia on the table. If weakness means compassion, then may every Karth learn to be weak. That day, the Dominion changed. The humans earned not just alliance, but honor. And as she stood under the twin sons of Vareth, 9, Sarai whispered into the wind. 17 seconds. Rourke. You lasted far longer than that. She smiled softly. And you won.